Hello everybody, it's Glass Half Dead here, and today I'm talking about Warhammer 40k, 40,000, instead of Kill Team, and I'm talking about Genestealer Cults. As you already know from the thumbnail and the title, they have a brand new Codex, and I have a channel about Kill Team, not about Warhammer 40,000, and this means that I get review copies, but I don't know how to play the game. This is an issue when I'm trying to give advice, when I build a channel based around giving tactical advice to people, because I can't do it. That's a bit of an issue, I'm not going to lie. However, it turns out if you are a frequenter of YouTube, there are other people who know more about Warhammer 40,000 than I do. And there are other people that know more about Genestealer Cults than I do, especially in 40k. In fact, if you go right now and type in Warhammer 40,000 Genestealer Cults, one of the top videos you might find is by a small channel called The Sandman. This guy, he seems to be pretty good with the cults, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a beginner, and I need to know how to play the cults, because I want to do a battle report in Warhammer 40k between the Genestealer Cults and the Custodes, for your enjoyment, and, in some way, for mine. But I don't know how to play. So here's what this video is going to be. It's going to be me talking to the Sandman, who you should definitely check out, as he looks for the first time at the Genestealer Cults Codex, and gives his first impressions so that I can go ahead and record a battle report, which I've already done, and will be up on my channel right now, actually. So if you have a thing for White Dwarf-esque battle reports with funky graphics and arrows pointing where different units move, go and check that out after this video. If you have a thing against absolute noobs asking good players dumb questions because they're a noob and don't know any better, this might not be the video for you, but that's what's about to happen. First things first, Sandman, how's it going?
Hi everyone, I'm the Sandman, a fellow Warhammer YouTuber and massive fan of the Four-Armed Emperor.
Delightful. Also, if you want to see a full 2.5-hour podcast long-form discussion between me and the pro player himself, that's going to be up on my Patreon very soon, but because it's so long-form and niche, it is Patreon only. Now let's dive straight into it. I've been keeping my eye on the Warcom articles, right? Because I'm interested in this kind of subversive fluff and this idea of rising up. That sounds very, rise up gamers kind of thing, right? So I've seen the crossfire rules and I've seen the exposed rules, and it's like, okay, cool. So I have to be kind of behind my opponent for these things to work. How does that happen? Is this something that I should look at always doing, or is it something that happens every once in a while and it's just actually a very niche rule, but in general your units are strong enough that you don't need to focus on that? Or what I'm saying is, the army-wide rules, are they worth playing for? How do they work? Sandman, please help.
I think the army-wide rules that we've got in the Genestealer Cult Codex are really quite tasty. I think they've answered two pretty big things with them. The main thing the Genestealer Cults lacked in 8th edition were ways to deep strike reliably and well, and you saw very few competitive players playing with amounts of their army in deep strike. However, the Genestealer Cult deep striking rule now says you can deep strike over 8 inches away and not 9 inches away, and that's if you don't want to deep strike over 6 inches away or over 3 inches away if you pay for an upgrade. And so we have these ways to really steal objectives and mess with our opponent and force them to play incredibly cagey and overly screen things out. And so that's really excellent. I think the other thing to mention is that you can breathe a sigh of relief. You can breathe a sigh of relief because blips have remained. They are still in the book. They have fixed the rule that says that you can't deploy outside of your deployment zone and then get some like first turn charges. However, if you want to make first turn charges, there are multiple ways to make first turn charges in this book. Yeah, be excited is my advice. And I think in terms of exposed and crossfire, I think having gone through the book now, there are multiple ways to give crossfire to enemy units and give exposed enemy units. And I think it's going to be pretty reliable if you build a balanced GSC list or a GSC list with lots of shooting. I think it's pretty excellent. So yeah, the faction specific rules are great. Yeah, those are the main ones I think I wanted to cover.
Wow, the words of a pro right there. Thank you very much, Sandman. But I'm still a noob, and what I need help with isn't how to customize my own list to its best, top tier competitive niche. I want to know defaults. I want to know take all comers stuff. I don't know what a meta is. Cults. That's the first thing you pick. What is the default cult? What can I take and know is a safe pick? I've had a look through the Codex myself, and I've got to say, I like the look of Twisted Helix. It seems very basic. It seems very, hey, you get +1 strength, go have fun. But what do you think is something that I and other noobs like myself should really be looking at for their first game out?
I think after a first glance, I should say, I've had a first glance of the book. I think the cult I'm probably going to go down to start with is actually still Pauper Princes. Now, the actual cult trait is half amazing. Half of it is you get +1 to hit when you charge or are charged, which is great. The reason that's important is because rock cutters, I think, are still very good, and they still give you a -1 to hit, and hitting on 4s is simply not reliable enough. So getting the +1 to hit is really great, and actually most of your other stuff hits on 3s, so you're now going up to hitting on 2s, which is awesome. The other half allows you to ignore modifiers like combat attrition, which is not great. And I will say you can also take a custom cult creed and get just the first part, and then take, ignore modifiers when shooting, for example, which is fantastic. So I think the custom cult creeds have a lot of play, and that might be the better to go. However, with Pauper Princes, there is a relic, I believe it's a relic, where you get an aura of a 5-up burn. In an army that has predominantly, this is for core, in an army that has predominantly 5 saves, a 5-up invuln is fantastic. And we'll probably talk a little bit later about how there is actually some decent survivability in this book now. It's not going to ruin your day, but it is very good. And so, yeah, some point sufficient stuff. And I think that is a really great buff. And so if I'm taking Pauper Princes, I'm taking it with that in mind.
Okay, you touched on relics there, but the specific relic. I know, I'm new, but I know this, that you also need to always take a relic, right? When you're building a 40k list, there are things that you need to do outside of just what data sheets are you taking. One of them is relics. What do I do?
In terms of other relics, there are some things I like. I still quite like the Crouchling. I thought that was pretty cool. The ability to reroll a cast is really good. The cult psychic powers are not as good as they were before. I think we were all expecting them to get nerfed. However, they're still very good, and they're still, I think, quite important to play the army well. And actually having undeniable cast when you get double is really cool. I also quite like the Claw upgrade for the Primus. It's not going to make him the clearest character in the game, but not every faction can have the clearest character in the game. So I think having him get, flat 3 damage, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s is really cool, and gives him a lot of play and, yeah, versatility instead of just being a buff character.
Okay, I think I'm with you. Now we get to possibly the scariest bit. So I'm just stratagems. I'm just going to go straight for it and confess I'm not going to memorize 4 pages of stratagems. I can barely memorize the 6 stratagems that you get in Kill Team. So let's just, buddy, help me. What are like 2 or 3 stratagems that I need to keep in mind that I can play in every game because they're always useful? Like what's strong? Don't give me the niche stuff. Tell me what do I need to know every game? Tactical reroll and...
I think the 2 that were previewed by Warhammer Community are actually 2 incredible ones. Fight Last is always really, really good. For example, in terms of other strats, yeah, there are some dynamite ones. You can go back into Deep Strike after killing something. That's really good. You can kind of treat your heavy mining weapons like plasma and get extra strength, extra damage. That's really cool. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. To be honest, there's a lot of good strats. You've got the human equivalent on aberrants, gives them a lot of play. Yeah, I actually, when I went through that book, I would say half of them have a lot of play.
I know this from Kill Team, and I know it from watching competitive games online, like the Art of War guys, Vanguard Tactics, Tabletop Titans, Tabletop Tactics, all these guys. It's all about, also they would have the noob beginner 40k player me believe, secondaries. What do? I know that in general, the Codex secondaries are better than the default ones. I have access to 3 in this codex. I can take one. Which one do I look at and focus on?
So we've got 2 secondary objectives that I think have some pretty good play. So we have one that gets you points if you have more models a part of the board than your opponent has in that part of the board, and that becomes very good in certain matchups, and a pretty good backup most of the time. The other one, however, that the problem with that is in Battlefield Supremacy. We haven't seen the full chapter through 2022, but I suspect that's an area we were already doing very well in. So kind of the actual marginal gain there isn't as great as you might think. The other stratagem that I quite like is one that basically gives you points for playing as GSC. You get points for killing stuff from reserves, points for killing stuff from crossfire. However, you only come in from reserves for 2 turns. Actually, unless there are ways to go back into deep strike, as I said, there might be some ways to get an extra couple of points here. But actually, this is quite limited in how many points you can get from this. So in terms of competitive play, I don't know. However, in terms of a reliable secondary, as a good backup if you have nothing else to choose, I think it's pretty good, and that's actually a big deal because we're very good at the secondary game. From what we've seen about chapter through 2022, it looks like things like acolytes are really valuable for getting you actions, etc. So we've always been very good at secondaries. I'm still very excited for the secondaries going forward.
Okay, I'm ready to talk data sheets. And by me talk data sheets, I mean you talk data sheets. I'm doing a lot of listening. I like it. Obviously, because of the army-wide rules, like a lot of other codexes have gotten in Warhammer, we have this thing where if you take an HQ, you can then take a character from elites without taking up a 4 slot. So I'm just going to guess that we're always taking 3 HQs, because then you can take the elites without taking up the 4 slot. Cool. With that in mind, what would you say? Again, I need take all comers. I need default picks. I need auto picks almost. What do you think are the auto pick HQs that you're taking in every single game?
So I think in terms of default, again, off a first glance, going to restate that here. I think I'm going to go with the Magus and the Acolyte Icon Ward. The Magus is just pretty great, casting 2 powers, really cheap unit, and the psychic powers are still fantastic, as we saw. You might look at it in terms of, you don't get Abhor the Witch, but then you do get the 5 at Feel No Pain versus Psychic. And I just think the cult psychic powers are just very important to the faction working well. And so I'm probably going to take him or her most of the time with the Crouchling. And then I think the Acolyte Icon Award, the ability to keep reviving units. And I'll mention now the Aslan Jackals. I think you've probably seen a lot of top players getting quad bikes and wolf quads commissioned, and wondering why. It seems to me it's because the Acolyte Icon Award allows you to resurrect D3 models from a core unit nearby, including bikers. That's D3 wolf quads. So that is 8 wounds. That's like 78 points. That's exactly the same as what the Chief Apothecary used to do for ATV, pretty much. That's how good that is, and you'll all remember how the internet was in uproar over that. So that's why I think that is so good. Also helps out with charging, which is really neat. The other HQs, I think the Primus, I like the Primus a lot with the Nexus. I think that's really cool, really flavorful. I should say as well, in terms of faction rules, one thing we've got is you can use command abilities after you've deep struck. Really cool, fantastic. So being able to do that is awesome. It's tough to justify things like the Primus purely in terms of if you have to commit him with other units nearby, he's still a T4 model with a 5-up save. He's going to die. However, yeah, I think I'm going to try him with the Relic Claw. There's a Warlord trait to give him an extra attack and toughness, I believe. So yeah, he's going to be pretty tasty, and he can kill some stuff. He can buff some stuff. The Nexus allows him to be pretty flexible there. I like it. I'm not wowed by the Patriarch right now. It's a lot of points. I think it's 140. Tough to justify. Yeah, but I hope I'm wrong. I love the Patriarch. Of course I do. Our glorious leader.
Okay, HQs are great. They're fun characters, but you know, HQs these days in Warhammer, they seem to just be, hey, you get an aura. Nice. So let's talk the real stuff. Troops. I know I need to know what I'm doing with my troops. We have two. We have Acolytes and we have Neophytes. What's good? Am I taking max squads? I know there used to be an Acolyte Flamer Bomb. Now you can take 2 heavy weapons and 2 special weapons in a team of 10 Neophytes. Do I really want 4 heavy weapons and special weapons in a blob? What do I do? And the Acolytes have access to amazing mining weapons, but I don't really know if I should take them or if I'm running minimum squads. Sandman, help me.
Both of the troop options are great. I think that there is nothing wrong with either of them. I think that they're a good example of where kind of the damage output is probably not overwhelming from Genestealer Cults. That's why I don't think this book is going to freak people out as such, because we've got things like Crossfire, but then we're paying more points. So I think that that's fine. We've got an extra toughness on the Acolytes. Kind of neither here nor there. I had a little bit of a jot down for some Mad Hammer stuff, which I thought was interesting. When units are on their own, actually things like the drills become quite interesting, because you're fishing for 6s, but the actual average damage is actually higher than what you get for the other units. However, if you can buff some rock cutters really well, then actually the rock cutters become really great units. They become really great options, but and then the rock saw is basically still the same, which is still just great. So that's really cool. You've also kind of got an extra half heavy weapon, because now you've got the bone sword being buffed to 2 damage, and you get the whip for free, I believe, which gives you rerolls to hit. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And then the Neophytes, still great. Yeah, anti-tank weaponry, lots of bodies. I think going for just like a horde of Neophytes has play it. It's not my preferred play style, but if that is what you like, if you like playing with massive amounts of models, you could give them the 5-up invern. Rusted Claw still gives you benefits to survivability. Twisted Hicks give you survivability benefits. I don't think that it would be a bad play at all. And then you could be resurrecting, 6 models a turn. I think that's going to annoy a lot of people and do some pretty good work.
So do whatever. Gotcha. Good advice. Okay, let's look at the elites slot. Wow, there's a lot. And that's because, as we both know, Genestealer Cults are very elites heavy. Specifically, character heavy. That's what they're all about. They have weak troops, but then they have funky characters. At least, that's kind of the fantasy of the army. Let's start with the non-characters. Let's start with the 3 units of elites that you can take. Because as a noob, I'm looking at the pure strain Genestealers, and I'm not really sure when I'm taking them. I'm looking at the Metamorphs, and I feel like they're just better. But do I take Flamers? I don't know. And Aberrants look super expensive, but they look like they're just going to crumble to small arms fire. What do I do? How do I run them? How do I stop myself from being tabled turn 2?
So the Genestealers are an interesting option. I think you could take them to get a first turn charge, because they're very fast, and you can get an upgrade for a pre-game move. Very cool. I should say the upgrades are awesome. You can get some very reliable charges out of Deep Strike. You can get some extra attacks. But I don't think the Genestealers need those as such, because they've got 4 attacks hitting on 2s. I think one interesting thing on all of these options, I think a lot of people will want to see, even if you're not a Genestealer Cult player, is we all saw the Death Guard book, we all saw the Drukari book, and we thought, oh, GW has gone down this route of saying we are going to take away options to limit you to what is in the box. They've not gone that way for Genestealer Cults. What they've done is said, oh no, the Aberrant Pick and the Aberrant Hammer, that's now the same weapon. The Metamorph, you've gone from like 4 options to 1 option. And yeah, same with the Genestealers. You no longer have Talons and Claw, you have Genestealer Talons and Claws. So that's a really interesting one. It gives them a much more specific purpose. Yeah, the Genestealers, a lot of anti-infantry attacks. I don't necessarily think that's where I'm going to go, although they have a 4-up inver now, so they're one of the more survivable units. However, I do really like the Metamorphs. The Whips are now only on the leader. However, the ability to fight on death is now just their rule. That is what they do. I think units of 5s of them are really great. I think that that's awesome. I think you can take your hand flamers on them or on the acolytes. Hand flamers are still great. There's nothing I can see in the book that prevents you from using hand flamers to get free crossfire markers. So that's really cool. I really like those. They're still awesome. Decent amount of attacks. And then, of course, we have the aberrants. And so the aberrants now have this purpose, which is they have they no longer have a -1 to hit, but they are, ×2. I think -2 and 3 damage. And so they're going to be great going into tanks. They no longer have the 5-up Feel No Pain, which is interesting. However, you can get the 5-up Feel No Pain from the Biophagus, which we'll talk about in a sec, and they have got an extra wound, and they have got access to a stratagem for transhuman physiology. So I think they're pretty cool. I think that that's good. I definitely want to try some aberrants. Yeah, there's still quite a lot for 30 points, but I guess we'll see.
Okay, Sandman, let's do it. Characters, elite characters, there's like 50 of them. Go for it. I will try and pay attention.
So I guess the first thing on characters, really nice buff. We, of course, got the upgrade that pretty much every codex got, which allows you to take extra characters in your slots. Of course, we all wanted to see that. I think a lot of them are pretty interesting. I think a lot of them are quite expensive, being honest. And especially when, what we're good at is playing for the mission. I'm not entirely sure I want to spend all these points on buffs that may or may not come up. So we've got things like the Abominant, really cool. If you're taking lots of aberrants, yeah, genuinely good. He has still got the 5-up Feel No Pain, oddly, and he gives, I believe, rerolls to hit for aberrants nearby. Pretty cool. Still only 3 attacks. Come on, man. I really wish we'd got more than 3 attacks. There's no minus to hit, but again, that's not great. We then also have things like the Kelemorph and the Sanctus. Really interesting snipers. Fantastic options in the army. However, I think overwhelmingly, that's not something I want to lean too heavily on. I do really like the Kelemorph. And I think he's got extra range. He could move, and then he can shoot, and then he can move again. And it's one of those rules that says he can make a normal move after he shoots. That means that he can then embark back onto a transport. That's really cool. The Sanctus, the ability to cause things to perils is now a stratagem, I believe. So that's still quite interesting. You can even use it on the dagger. I'm not sure I'd pay for the points on him, although he has got the ability, same as the Saboteur, to not be shot if he's not the closest unit. The Biophagus, which I spoke about before, really interesting buffing character. He now can give his buffs to core, which is very, very cool. So you can bring him to support aberrants or just support core. You can even get upgrades to have his first buff set. You can also roll for it, and there are options for 6s to hit exploding. You can get extra EP, but that 5-up Feel No Pain is often where I think I'm going to go. It depends on what's in your army, I guess, but that's pretty cool. The Saboteur we've seen already. I think pretty great. Again, decent long-range firepower, good anti-tank. Yeah, really solid. Can even do some actions, which is, really tasty. We've then got the Nexus. I think a really cool ability. There is an upgrade, relic for him that allows you to farm command points. Really nice. You're going to like that. But I think what's really cool is he can allow you to spread your auras and command abilities across the battlefield, which I think is really nice. I definitely think I want to try him straight away. You've got the Clamavers. He allows you to shoot and do actions. He allows you to disable actions of your opponent or take away OBSEC. This is one of those abilities that is fantastic. It will win you some games. However, it will have a lot of games where it does nothing. And that is why I'm going to struggle to justify him. We'll see. The Locust, I kind of wanted more from the Locust. I'm not going to lie. He's still not overwhelmingly fantastic. He's reasonably cheap, but his bodyguard ability when he's T4 with a 5-up save, if you can get to him, you can get to whatever character he's protecting, is kind of my thought process. So I don't know. So I think of the elite characters, I'm going to lean Nexus and Kelemorph, but I like the Saboteur as well. So we'll see. We'll see. It's tough to say without playing them.
Wow, that was a lot. Blimey. Golly. Gee whiz. Fiddlesticks. Fast attack.
The Jackals, I think this is what people are probably most excited for today. We will see how this all plays out. 12 points to model, pretty great. T4, -1 to hit, 2 wounds. You can pay 25 points. I think you can get a quad bike, 24 points, and a 15-point upgrade, I think, for the mining laser, which is what I will probably do. You could kit them out all with close combat weapons if you'd want. A bunch of attack, strength 4, -2/1 damage. Actually, not that bad. They've got a pre-game move if you'd like. 23 inches turn 1 and then charging. I'll take that. So yeah, really good, strong, reliable firepower, resurrectable. You've still got the demo charges. The demo bomb is not like it was before. I won't really miss it, to be honest, but you have got some cool stuff. You have got some cool stuff you can do with the demo bombs, and I'll probably be taking them. I think to start with, absolutely, they're really tasty. I think they're awesome. But yeah, I think the quads are the things you're going to want to get painted up to try around to mess around with, but we'll see how that goes. And they've got some brilliant abilities. They can like fall back and shoot, they fall back and charge. Yeah, they can grant exposed to things nearby. The Achilles Ridge Runners, I used to run 9 of them. I think if you wanted to run 9 again, I actually don't think it's that bad. I think they're pretty interesting. They don't require a lot of character support. They've got an extra toughness. They've now got a 6-up invuln on the flare launcher, and if you take the flare launcher, then they're -2 to charge, which means you basically can't charge them out of deep strike unless you want to make it an 11. So that's really cool. Yeah, they're pretty excellent, I think. The weapons on them are also much more interesting. The mining laser is still the same. Mortar is now strength 6 -1, d6 shots. That's actually pretty interesting. And the missile launcher is 3 shots, strength 6, -3 damage. Again, pretty interesting. I don't know exactly. I'm going to lean towards the mining lasers still. However, the other 2 options are still pretty great. The reason Reach Runners are so good is basically twofold. A, because they grant you to the last. That's the same amount of wounds as a knight. Like, they are really not something to be scoffed at. You got to remember as well, these units are now getting buffed from Cult Creed, so they're even tougher if you'd like. And yeah, they've also got anti-infantry and anti-tank firepower that's long range. They're a really great unit. They're now more expensive, so if you don't see them, that'll be why. But yeah, I certainly like them, especially with exposed and crossfire. However, I really want to talk about heavy support. So
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's your video. Go for it.
the Goliath Rock Grinder, I'm going to say it's here and it's here to play. So interesting thing about the Goliath Rock Grinder is that it's toughness 7, it has a 3-up save, and there's -1 damage. If that rings a bell, that's because that is the profile of Dreadnoughts. And the Goliath Rock Grinder is much cheaper than the Dreadnought is. He's good in combat. He's got good shooting, especially with the seismic cannon. So actually, I think he's a serious contender in this book. And I think if you want to go all Ridge Runners and all Rock Grinders, you've actually got a pretty decent army. I don't know if it's the best way to go, but I think if you want to play mechanized SC, I think you got some good stuff there. And yeah, the trucks are definitely still amazing. Yeah, open topped, again, -1 damage. To show you how good that is, you, I'm sure, remember a short while ago, up until literally still today, Orc Buggies are very, very good. This is just a flat -1 damage. They're like a mid-profile, so they're not super tough to kill. That means that the weapons that should be very efficient against them will not be. They've now got a 3-up save, so they'll be able to shrug much more. I really like them. I think they're fantastic. Yeah, I really want to run 3 Rock Grinders, and yeah, trucks are still amazing. I think they're still going to be really important to your playstyle. Sorry, I've moved on to transports now. Yeah, they're still really important to your play. I'm just too excited. I think they're too important to your playstyle because even if you've got a lot in reserves, you still need to have half your army deployed or in blips, let's say. So I think that, yeah, trucks are still a great way to deliver units. They're a great way to protect units if you're acolytes or neophytes. So yeah, I think they're here to play as well.
Okay, Sandman. Wow. every data sheet covered. Thank you very much. Honestly, looking at a new codex as a beginner is always a difficult prospect. I'm a beginner. You know what you're talking about, at least to some degree, more than me and my dozen games at 1,000 points. So thank you very much. Everybody, that's the Sandman. He actually knows how to play Genestealer Cults. Me, I'm just the guy that got the rules early. So, if you want to see these being played, check out my battle report. If you want to see someone that knows what they're talking about, check out the Sandman's channel. It is just the Sandman. Sandman, do you want to say goodbye?
So yeah, that's it. That's what I've got off of first glance. It's a lot of rules. I think if you're not a Genestealer Cult player, a lot of these rules will confuse you. I think if you're a Genestealer Cult player, you'll get used to them pretty quickly. However, if you want to confuse your friends, collect Genestealer Cults, because there's if you want to go for all of the upgrades, you want to go for all the characters, you can get some tasty stuff here. I'm so excited for this book. This has been so awesome. So thanks for having me, and goodbye, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That's been the Sandman. I've been Glass Half Dead. Consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, and if you really like what I'm doing, supporting me over on Patreon. I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.